Hello everyone and welcome to Callsign Charlie Models. Andre here, and today we have another inbox review, the Kinetic 148 scale C-2A Greyhound. This is a little bit different than what we typically do with the scale in 148 scale. Typically I build 132nd, but sadly there's no 132nd Greyhound out there, which I honestly do not see them doing a 132nd Greyhound unless somebody does one off in a 3D printed version or something like that. But I do not see a major manufacturer doing the C2 Greyhound in a plastic kit. This one does have some fond memories for me because when I was on deployment, these guys were the ones that would bring in our mail and all of our supplies. And I remember over the 1MC, whenever these guys were arriving, they'd pipe over the 1MC, now 3,000 pounds of mail arriving. And then the next one would come in, they say now 2,000 pounds of mail arriving, and so on and so on. Then you go down to Hangar Bay 2 where they'd sort all the packages and you'd see just a ton of packages. And this is in the pretty much early days of Amazon, and you just see Amazon packages littered. Now the internet service while deployed was not good back in 2003, 2004. I remember you click the next button and then you go down to the smoke pit, have a cigarette, and then come back, and then the new page would just be coming up fresh. Then you click on the next one and then you just repeat the process or do some work and then come back, and it would take a good hour to order one piece from the internet back then on board back in 2003, 2004. But anyways, that was a nice little sea story memory that I have and will always have for that. And then going on by the top box art, we have a nice little print of the C2 on the cat getting ready to launch right here. We do have two different options for this. We have VRC 30 from the USS Ronald Reagan in 2010, and then we also have VRC 30 Det 5, the USS George Washington 2011, Operation Tomodachi right here. And then we go off to the side. We have some nice reference photos on the side of the actual aircraft on the interior right here. And then we have the model features, which include movable 4-bladed and the 8-bladed propellers included, detailed cockpit with instrument panel and seats, detailed interior, landing gear and tail unit, a folding wing or a full wingspan options, open and closed rear cargo ramp options, and open and closed side door options, and removable cabin seats. So you can have different loadouts. You can have them bringing on crew, or you can have it bringing on equipment. So you do have multiple options with that. And we also do have a nice little history on the side of the box of the C2 Greyhound. It is a long service aircraft. It first entered service in 1966 and is still trucking along very nice. I think the MV-22 Osprey is going to be taking over the role of this here shortly, but it is still in service as we speak today. So a very long service right there. Almost 60 years, yeah. So and then we go off to the other side. We have the other just a repeat of the box art, and we also do have it saying that the decals are from Cartograph. Now I have heard from earlier reviews when I watched before I bought this kit, I did watch some inbox reviews on this and some build videos of it, and they did say that the Cartograph decals in this kit were not the standard Cartograph. I do know that people were having issues with them sliding off and then being actually stuck to the model and being very difficult to move around. So we'll have to see about that when we build this kit, which for me might be pretty soon. I'm supposed to build this for one of my old Navy buddies. I'm waiting for him to get back from deployment so that way I can build this for him, and we'll have to go from there. So we open up the top of the box right here, and it is going to be nicely packed and full of plastic right here. We have our instructions, then all the plastic and everything. I'm going to get everything set off to the side and ready to go, and then we'll start going through the instructions, decals, and all the plastic, and I will be back in 1 second. Alright, so we're starting off with the instructions. We have a nice little booklet format right here, black and white. We have, again, the history of the C-2A Greyhound right here. Then we also have the legend of symbols that we're going to be using throughout the build as well. And also the recommended tools, which if you're new to the hobby, definitely getting these will be helpful. And then if you're an old timer to the hobby, you definitely have multiple sets of those tools. After that, we have the parts call out right here. The parts are not numbered in the call out, so you'll just have to find them on the sprue. Luckily, the sprue count is not very high. And then we have our painting guide with our color call outs using Mr. Color, Hobby Color, and Vallejo right here. Alright, so now starting the kit, we are working with our cargo deck and also our flight deck right here. We do have all these crew seats to do, and then we also have the pilot seats and everything going on right there. Then we have some sidewalls going into the fuselage along with the overhead right here, and a couple other pieces like our ramp being built right there. After that is all done, we have all the sub assemblies that we just got done doing on the previous 6 steps, and we are getting those sandwiched into the fuselage. Then after that, we are going to start working on our tailplane with our rudders and the stabilizers right here. And then we are working on our folding wings, our center wing section right here with our flaps. We do have the option of having the flaps up or down. And then we're getting that center wingspan put onto the fuselage along with our tailplane right here. And then this is the time that it has you attach the side door with the steps right there. After that, we are attaching our nose landing gear and a few other antennas, lumps and bumps, and landing gear doors going on there at that point. And now we're starting with our engine nacelles with our aft landing gear going on and our intakes and everything. I do know there are aftermarket intakes that will look possibly a little bit better than what these are in the kit, but I think in the kit these should look pretty good. Alright, up next we have our propellers. Again, we have the option of having the 4-blade or the 8-blade propellers depending on which version you're doing right there, and then also adding in our landing gear doors to the engine nacelles right there. After that, we are starting our outer wings, working on our flaps and our ailerons right there, and our wing fold assembly going on as well. And then we're going to be attaching our engine nacelles and also our cargo ramp door right there. And then finally, we have the option of having the wings extended or folded right here. Going to be attaching them. I'm hoping that the connection point for the wings folded is a strong connection point. We'll have to see when we actually build this, or if we're going to have to help support it with some brass rods right there. Alright, and then the last step is adding in antenna, lumps and bumps, pitot tubes, and all of that going on the belly and also to the top side. And then we have our color callouts for VRC USS Ronald Reagan 2010 right here. A nice colorful scheme, but it's in black and white, so definitely going to have to follow the colors from the color guide right there. And then lastly, we have VRC 120 2009 right here. Again, pretty nice, pretty blank color scheme on that. And then that's it for the instructions. Instructions are looking pretty nice so far. Then we have our decals right here. Again, nice colors, the walkways, everything. They do feel a little bit thick, especially for cartograph decals going on right here. As you can see, all the stenciling and everything looking very nice. And then we have the propeller tips right here for decals, unless you want to paint them on right there. So again, very nice decals. This sunrise right here is going to look very nice as well. And I'm hoping that the stories that I heard on YouTube from earlier builds were just user error and not the actual quality of the decals. But there are aftermarket decals out there available, so I might be looking into those with that. Alright, so now moving on to our plastic. Plastic is a nice quality plastic right here. as you can see, we do have some very nice panel lines and a little bit of rivet detail on there. That's actually pretty nice from Kinetic right here. So again, as you can see, these are our outer wings right here, and then our ailerons and everything going on. Very nice fine rivet detail with that. It looks like it's going to be in scale. Maybe the panel lines might be a little bit thick, but with scale models they kind of have to be a little bit thicker than what would be on scale, because in scale you would not be able to see these panel lines at all right here. So that's what you have for the outer wings, and then also our flaps. There is a little bit of flash going on with this right here around on these flaps, or at least just on this aileron right here. That's the only part that I'm seeing any flash on that. And the reverse side of everything, they're in half, so this is all going to be covered up when you glue the two pieces together. Alright, now we have another sprue with our wings, but on the reverse side, so this is the underside of our wings. And as you can see, again with the panel lines, they might be a little bit thick, but they do seem okay. And there is no rivet detail on this underside. We also have the area that's going to be where our wings connect to our tailplane when they are in the folded position. And then we go on to the vertical stabilizers, and we do have some very nice rivet detail on those. And again, the panel lines, they are a little bit thick, but you can go in and fill those in and then rescribe them for the thickness that you want, or you can just leave them how they are and they will look okay when it's all built up and painted and weathered and all that. So really help minimize the panel lines on that. So again, you can see all the other detail on here right there with the rivet detail. Rivet detail looks very nice. Panel lines, like I said, might be a little bit oversized. Alright, so moving right along, we have our engine nacelles right here, and again, very nice detail on this. Actually, the panel lines on these sprues do look a lot better than the panel lines on the other one. And then we do have our instrument panel right here, which does have some very nicely molded on detail, nice and crisp. And I believe there's a instrument panel decal that goes over that hopefully will shrink into that. But also, you're really not going to be able to see much of the detail that's inside the cockpit once the clear parts are on top. Then we have our landing gear, which is molded in one piece right here. We're going to flip it over here in a second to check the other side, but as you can see, everything else on this side is looking pretty nice. Our cockpit flight deck right here, again, some really nice molded on detail onto the side panels right there that are going to paint up really nice. And then we have our rudder pedals, which you won't be able to see. And then our aft deck, or our bulkhead right here, again, no detail to that on this side. We'll have to see when we flip it over on how it looks. But going on just all the other detail parts for this right here, no real issues with any of that. We flip it over to the other side. We do have a lot of ejector pin marks on the inside right here, where you're going to be able to see like that piece right there. So definitely going to need to fill all that. And then on here, the instrument panel backside, you're not going to see. And then we do have a ton of ejector pin marks on the inside of the roof of the aft landing gear well. So definitely going to need to take care of those as well. And then for our aft bulkhead, again, a couple ejector pin marks. If you're going to leave the cargo bay open, you might be able to see those, I'm not sure. And then for our nose landing gear well, inside the landing gear well, we do have two ejector pin marks that might be a little bit difficult to take care of. Then moving on to the rest of the parts, for these flap or these doors that go onto the connection point for the folded wings, there's no ejector pin marks on that, so those are nicely molded. And then going off for the rest of the parts, for our nose landing gear, we have a tiny ejector pin mark right there. It's going to be really easy to clean up. Then we have the overhead control panel right here. Again, a decent amount of detail. It is very kind of soft on the detail, but then again, you are really, I don't know how you'd be able to see this detail when it is in the model under the glass and everything. So as you can see, all the other parts right here with our landing gear. Not sure how this landing gear goes, if this is the nose possibly, but we do have a large ejector pin mark on that one right there. So continue on, just a repeat for the other one. and then all the other parts going on right there. Alright, so now moving on to our fuselage halves, and on the fuselage halves, the detail on here does look fairly nice with the panel lines and very little rivet detail except for around these panels back here, and then around these panels up here we have some raised detail along there, as you can see, and it does have a fairly nice shape to it. We do have a little bit of flash right along here, which shouldn't be an issue to clean up, and just a repeat of the other side right here. Now we flip it over for the interior. We do have a little bit of aft framing detail right there. Might need to spruce that up just a wee bit, especially if we're going to be leaving the cargo door open. Then we're going to have the sidewalls and everything on there to help cover up some of these ejector pin marks on that, so there's not really much of an issue with that area. And then for the cockpit area, we do have the sidewalls that are going to go up and cover up these ejector pin marks on there. So for the interior detail, I'm really not worried about any of the ejector pin marks. Maybe some of these back here that you might be able to see if you pick the model up and look under it, you will be able to see these, but if it's just sitting on the deck, you're not going to be able to see those. And also the measurement of this for a 148 scale model, this is actually a pretty large model. Zooming out here, and the total length of it is about 360 millimeters or 14 inches from nose to tail, and then we're going to be adding on a few more, like maybe another inch or a few more millimeters onto the back end of this with the tail plane added onto it. So it is going to be a fairly decent sized model for a 148 scale kit. Alright, so now we're moving on to our interior set right here, and we are looking at our passenger seats in the back right here. Look pretty nice. You can kind of spruce those up with some seat belts and everything, and also unless it's the very front row of seats, it's going to be very hard to see any of these seats. And then we're going on to the interior section, which we do have some nice detail on the sidewalls right here, and then also on this electronics box right there. And then on the other side we have some more detail, and then more seats right there. Now our flight deck back here, the cargo deck, is actually very blank. It's flat, there's no detail to it. It does have all the holes to put all your passenger seats on the back. So with this, the way I'm looking at it is I am definitely going to be doing the passenger seats on the back to fill all these holes. Otherwise I'm going to have to go in there and fill them with putty. And then also you do have like maybe doing some scratch building with some styrene to add in some detail on there. But I think for me, for this kit, I'll have to double check with my buddy, but I'm just going to put all the seats in the back right there. So, and then on the reverse side, you're not going to be able to see any of this unless maybe this section right here, and we do have a couple of large ejector pin marks on each one of those. Okay, so moving on to our next sprue right here, we have our wing fold area right here, and we have actually some very nice cabling detail on there. Hopefully the camera will focus. There we go. As you can see there, and also some nice framing detail, and also some nice rivet detail right along there as well. Hopefully, don't know why the camera's not focusing, but there we go. And then a bunch of other little detail parts I can't tell if that is flash. That looks like flash that we're gonna have to cut off. So a lot of flash on this kit right here. Alright, now we have our landing gear doors and everything. There is a little bit of detail on the inside of them, but we also do have a few ejector pin marks on the inside. Then we have wheels. We do have a couple pieces that fell off on that, and I'm trying to figure out if this is a double sprue. Okay, yep, this is a double sprue, so we get two of these right here. We have some landing gear parts, our intakes or exhaust. Again, the inside, once I find where I'm at, are nice and smooth. No issues with those right there. You're just going to have the seam line to deal with when you glue those together. Then our landing gear doors, again, for the nose, pretty nice with the rivets and everything. So no issues with any of that. I'll flip it over to see the other side of the landing gear doors and everything, and panels right here. Again, very nicely done. We do have a little bit of flash on this door right here, but everything else looks pretty nice. We have our wheel hub right here, pretty basic on the wheel hub. Okay, up next we have our inner wing right here, and again, nice panel and rivet detail going on in this kit right here, as you can see on this, looking very nicely done on that. And the quality of plastic, the gray plastic quality is very nice. The white quality plastic is, it leaves a little bit to be wanting, but it will do the job right there. But again, you see all the other parts right there. Very nice. Alright, so now we have our tailplane right here. You can see all the very nice panel line and rivet detail. No issues with any of that going on. We even have our static discharge wands molded in. They do seem a little bit thick, so it might cut them off and then replace them with some lead wire just to give some scale thickness on that. Everything else on here with the molded in detail looks pretty good. To a point. Alright, so moving right along, we have our top side detail right here. Just a little bit of framing, and then we have some more interior detail going on right through these. I'm not sure what these parts are. And then we have our ramp detail right here and here, or parts of our ramp. And we have more antenna and some other pieces going on. We have our tail hook right here. Then our actual floor for our cargo ramp right here. Just a couple panel lines, no actual detail on that. And a little bit of detail for our cockpit going on. And then the underside of our ramp with our tail hook bay right there. And we flip it over to the other side. Really not much to consider on this one, minus these two pieces right here, and these actually do look pretty nice. I'm not seeing any. Maybe this is an ejector pin mark right here, kind of looks rough. Definitely going to want to sand that out to smooth that in, but again, pretty nice detail for what it is. Alright, so now we have another sprue with a lot of repeats on this one. We have some landing gear wheels right here, two piece. The hubs, very little detail to them, so if I'm going to do a replacement, I'm definitely going to be doing the wheels on that. Then we have a few other parts like the step, a door of some type right here, the other door for our boarding, our side boarding right here. Then we have some landing gear going on, and then an instrument panel right here. Again, the detail looks pretty good for injection molding on the instrument panel. And then for this piece, we'll flip it over here in a second to see how the detail is on the other side. But just going around on here, very nice detail for the most part. And then flip it over. Alright, so our nose landing gear, well, very nice. No ejector pin marks on this one, so I'm hoping that this is the one that we use for the nose on this kit. And then we just keep on going along with everything else. We do have the top right here. We do have two large ejector pin marks, but luckily they are on flat areas, so those will be very easy to sand out on that. And then the back side of our control panel, and then also the door right here, which you're going to be adding in that little step ladder part right here, so that's going to cover up that ejector pin. And we also do have some decent detail molded into that as well. Alright, so up next we have a double sprue with our 8-bladed propellers. You can see nice shape to these, and then also the nose cone looks pretty nice on that as well. So not much detail. We do have a little bit of flash on the edges of the propellers right there. So definitely going to take a little bit of sanding, but they should be alright. And we flip it over to the other side, just checking to make sure that we don't have ejector pin marks on any of this, and we do not. Just a little bit of flash on these. And again, we get two of these sprues. Alright, now we have our 4-bladed propellers. Again, a little bit of flash on there. A little bit of raised panel line detail on there as well. And the curvature to them, They do have a nice little curve to them as well, as you can see right there. And then we flip it over to the other side, no issues minus the little bit of flash that's on the edge. Alright, so now we have our last sprue, and these are our clear parts. And looking at the clear parts, we do have a little bit of a crack going down here. That's an internal crack, so you will not be able to fix that. But other than that, they do look nice and clear on that. And we do have another crack on this one right here, as you can see, another internal, so that is not fixable. And then we have our main canopy, which the clear parts do look nice and clear. I'm not seeing any issues. They're not opaque or anything. No mismoldings, no distortion or anything like that in there. And then the top of it right here, just making sure that those are just fingerprints and nothing else. So those do look pretty nice. And when you get everything painted up around it, it's really going to make them stand out anyways. Alright, so that is everything for the Kinetic 148 scale C-2A Greyhound. And the kit looks okay. It looks Kinetic, I believe, is a off-brand of Itinerary, and it looks like it's an Itinerary kit. The detail on it, it looks okay. It could be better, but of course it could be worse. I'm hoping that the fit on this kit is pretty good, but we'll have to see. I really don't have much else to say about this. I hope if you were on the fence about getting this kit, I hope this video helped you. And then if you haven't yet, don't forget to like and subscribe. Comment down below, especially if you built this. Let us know if there's any hiccup areas or snafus in this model kit as well. Other than that, I hope you guys have a great day. Stay frosty and happy modeling.